Today I'd like to speak to you on identity theft. A few weeks ago, my wife received a mail saying that a Buick car that she owns needed to be extend her warranty. And she showed it to me, but I said, well, we don't have a Buick. So I disregarded it. Then, lo and behold, another one appeared this week. And this time it showed not only that you need to extend the warranty, but showed the many services that the car has had and the dollar amount. So then we decided to call this company, and then we're told it was a computer glitch. I think that we all are aware of the fact of identity theft out there, and you know that there are certain things that we need to guard and to protect our identity. And what are they? Our social security number, a birthday, an address, and date of birth, and your credit card number. In today's gospel, well, let's go back there. And when our identity is stolen, what happens to us? We feel assaulted, violated, angry, vulnerable, frightened, and you know, it can change our whole financial perspective, and which may take a very long time to be repaired. Well, fortunately, my wife and I, we didn't go through that because we didn't even recognize the company, and we didn't suffer, or finances were not compromised. So it was maybe one of those computer glitches. But in today's gospel, we hear of our Lord after he had been baptized. And at his baptism, we remember those words that we hear. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. An affirmation. You are my son. That's your identity. And soon after he was baptized, now, I suppose he went to what you would say a boot camp. Went into the wilderness, went to spend some quiet time to meditate on this mission that he was about to take on. And while there, we are told that the devil came and tested him. And there are 3 temptations listed there. You remember what they are? Turning the stones into bread, and fall down and worship me, and I will give you everything. But you note how those first 2 temptations started. If you are. And note, he had just had the affirmation at his baptism, you are my son, in whom I am well pleased. He had that affirmation. And so he goes there to meditate with that affirmation, and then you hear that word, if, the seed of doubt. That's how Satan comes to us, friends, with doubt. You think you are. What did you hear when you were baptized? You think you heard that. Maybe you didn't hear right. So the tempter comes down and he said, if you are, turn these stones into bread. that's an assault on his identity. He is the Son of God. And the devil comes now to test him, to question his identity, to steal his identity. And then you note how Jesus responded, because he always responding with the affirmative and to bring God into it. It is written, you shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from God. The devil tries again. And so he led him to the pinnacle, and he placed him on this pinnacle in the temple. He said, if you are, again that if you are, you think you are. Somebody told you, maybe they're fooling you. It's an assault on his identity. But if you are, throw yourself down. Because Psalm 90 says that he will give his angels charge over you, and he will protect you. And Jesus responded, away with you, because you shall not test God. But the devil does not give up, and so he decided to take him and he showed him all the kingdoms of the world. He said, all these things I will give you if you just fall down and worship me. And then Jesus responded, get behind me, Satan. For it is written, you shall worship the Lord only, and him only shall you serve. Those temptations, friends, was not just a matter of maybe tempting him to turn stones into bread, but really to question his identity. It's an assault on his identity, to destroy his relationship with God. Now, when someone steals our social security number or date of birth and steal our identity, someone once said, who steals my purse steals trash, but he who steals my name steals that. Yes, and all these material things that we have, they're just fleeting things and they're passing away. But we have a greater identity. Because when you and I were baptized, just as when Jesus was baptized and Jesus heard those words, you are my beloved Son. When you and I were baptized, we were made children of God and inheritors of God's kingdom. And when you and I are tempted, and you and I are tempted in so many different ways. What are some of the ways we are tempted? To overeat, yes, that's a sin of gluttony. And that's one of the 7 deadly sins. What are some of the other sins or other temptations? Create death, yes. Greed, to steal, cheat on your taxes, to gossip, to speak ill of other people. And all those things, friends, you know what that is? That is to undermine our relationship with our neighbors and God. And when we were baptized, we were made members of God's family, children of God. And so those temptations is there to steal our identity. So if you think that the identity of maybe when someone steals your credit card is bad, this one is even worse. Because you can be lost forever. Because he who steals your purse steals flesh. But when they steal your identity, and that's what Satan was getting at. And so we need to realize and to guard ourselves how we can protect our identity. And then we know that how we should preserve our social security card and, and all those numbers and everything. But how do we guard against our spiritual identity? We need to realize that when are we most vulnerable? That's when the devil attacks us. You see, the devil knew Jesus' weaknesses. He knew that he was fasting. He knew that he was famished. He knew he was hungry. And so therefore he came and said, turn these stones. I know you're hungry. So turn these stones into bread. So whenever we are vulnerable, friends, look out. And we can be vulnerable maybe when we feel insecure in various ways, maybe in our finances, in our relationships. Maybe when we have had a bad relationship and it's turned sour and we break up with a loved one, that's the time that we are most vulnerable. When we are lost to someone, maybe through death, we are vulnerable. And so we have to look at ourselves, to guard ourselves when we are vulnerable, because that's the time the tempter may very well come. The tempter also comes when we try to deepen our relationship with God. Jesus went up to that mountain to spend some time, some quality time with God, to meditate. It is said that Satan trembles when he sees the sinner on his knees. You see, if Satan already has you in his camp, he doesn't worry about you. He's more concerned about those whom he doesn't have in his camp. And so Jesus went up, and while he was meditating, the devil was there. So don't be too surprised that even while you are here, friends, the tempter may not be tempting you. The devil could be very busy, even in the church, because he comes disguised. The devil can meet you at the door. The devil may be home waiting for you, or when you return to work. And the devil knows that even on this cold morning you took time off to come here. And so the devil look at you, but you must be real faithful. And you think that you are the child of God. And so he comes and he tests us. And you know, the devil comes and is very crafty, very cunning, you know. I'm told of the story of that priest who, back in one of those islands, you know, which the priest had several cures, so several churches where he had to go and minister. Maybe about 3 or 4 of them on a Sunday morning. So he would travel with his lunch. And he had his lunch kit on the desk in the vestry. And while he was preaching from his vantage point, he saw a little cat going towards the table in the office. And so the priest said, sometimes, you know, the devil comes in the form of a man. And sometimes it comes in the form of an animal. And sometimes it comes in the form of puss. And he said puss to scare the cat away. But seriously, friends, the devil comes in so many different forms. And guess what? He can come even in your loved one. Because in the gospel we are told that when Jesus told his disciples about his impending death and how he was going up to Jerusalem to be crucified, Peter rebuked him. He said, Master, you should never say a thing like that. We will never have anything like that happen to you. And Jesus said to him, get behind me, Satan, because you are thinking like men. And Jesus just told Peter that the devil is using you. Peter, one of the 12. So the devil can come to us even for our loved ones or friends. And so we have to ask ourselves, be careful. Are you a servant of the devil or God? And so when we speak those words, whenever utter any word, we have to ask ourselves, are these words words of God? Every statement that you make, am I speaking on behalf of God or on behalf of man, on behalf of the devil? So friends, as we come on this day, let us remember that we are here and we are tempted in so many different ways. And while we may be concerned about our physical identity or social security, remember we have a greater identity. And that is, we are children of God. And the devil seeks to destroy that, as he tried with Jesus. In the Lord's Prayer, we often pray that prayer, and lead us not into temptation, as if God would lead us into temptation. But that's the English language. A better translation you find in the prayer book. Save us in the time of trial. God never lead us into temptation. But temptation is always around us. As we speak about the devil, how do we find the devil? Do you think that there was a physical person in the wilderness with Jesus that you could say that's the devil? Maybe it's the different voices that we hear. Paul speaks about the struggle that we have in our lives. You know, he says, the good that I should do, that I don't, and the very evil that I should not, that I do. And he speaks about the conflict that goes on within us. The many voices that we hear. And so the devil may come to us in those voices. But we always have to bear in mind that the angels are there. Because as soon as the devil left, the angel came and ministered to our Lord. And the angel was always there. So let us remember, friends, that God's Spirit is always around us to sustain us as we go through our wilderness experience. That we can call on the strength from God to realize that as he went through those temptations, so too we are tested. And that God never gives us any more than we can bear. And he always make a way of escape for us. So temptations are real, friends. And temptation is not a sin. Is when we yield it to the temptation. And so the hymn says, yield not to temptation, for yielding is sin. But when we have mastered the temptation, we are stronger, as Jesus was And as he was able to come down from that mountain, being strengthened from that test. But then, of course, the devil came once more in the Garden of Gethsemane when he was finally tested. When Jesus realized the bitterness of that cup, he said, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. When Jesus realized the crucifixion was impending, he wanted to know probably if there's a way out. Maybe that's part of the doubt. And so he prayed, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass away from me. But then he said, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. So let us pray then for strength, for courage, for endurance when we are tested, that God may enable us and strengthen us when we go through those temptations in our various lives. Amen.